You know, I'd just like to share with you an experience I had a long time ago. A massively life-changing experience, beyond description. It was so big I didn't even understand it. I just took advantage of it. It changed me. I went on a better path, and it was wonderful. Basically, I was in a courtroom, and my life was in a bad place. I'd been inside institutions in and out a few times. I'd been living on the streets. I got myself into a lifestyle I couldn't get out of. I was trapped in it. I didn't like it. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like what was going on, but I seemed to be powerless to change it. But something came along to change everything. I was standing in the court, and as there was the judge and the prosecutor, defense, all these officials, and a voice rose up from within me, which I didn't understand really, and it kept saying, "You don't know me. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me." And I thought at the time the voice was speaking to the officials, because I thought it doesn't matter how much you've got written down on your pieces of paper. You don't know me. You don't know the heart of me, you know. And the more the voice came up and said it, the more I realized they didn't know me. And then the voice persisted. "You don't know me." And I started to realize that people who thought they knew me, my friends, people I'd grown up with, people I'd been in prison with, people I'd hung around with on the streets, who thought they knew me. I thought, you know what? You don't know me either. You really don't know me. And then it went to family. The voice persisted. "You don't know me." And I started to think about family. And I realized that as much as my mother and father had known me as a baby growing up, and my brother and my sister, aunties and uncles, grandparents, I thought, you know what? You don't have a clue who I am. I don't even know who I am. I've lost sight of who I really am, because I started to see who I really was. And as the reality of who I really was, this voice was me. This voice is who I really am. And it was coming up saying, almost like, when am I going to get my chance to be? You know, why are we always buried beneath this false image that you carry around? And that was the experience that went on in the courtroom that day. Because the more that I realized that I was this creature of light, because that's what it seemed like, I realized that I was okay. I wasn't anything like they thought I was. I wasn't anything like anybody thought I was. I was something else completely. And this wasn't something I could speak about to people for years, because it would have seemed ridiculous, would have seemed embarrassing. But I knew I was innocent. I knew I was pure, and I knew that I was good. I knew that I was okay. But everything that they were reading and everything other people would say about me said something different. But this was a very powerful arising of a reality from within, who I really was. And this is the curious thing about it. As I sort of embodied this identity in the courtroom, nobody knew it was happening, only me. I just embodied it. I was just standing there in this light. And it was sad in a way, because I turned as if the boy who'd walked in the court that day, I was almost 21 years old, and he walked in the court. He seemed to have a lot of experience, had been in and out of different institutions, running around the streets, been through a lot of things in his young life. And I looked at him and I thought, oh my God, because I suddenly saw that he was made up of little plates, like little little plates really, and each plate had a root, and each root went back to a thought or an idea, and the idea might have been something like, oh, wouldn't it be good if I was seen to have liked that kind of a book? Or wouldn't it be good if I'm seen to like this sort of music and that sort of music? Wouldn't it be good if I was associated with this group of people and that group of people, or like this football team, or I've been on a holiday to this place or went to that place? Everything was contrived. Everything was just an image that was built up over the years. And even though some of the things I'd built up and got on as plates in my life, I'd become redundant, because you haven't got much use for the values of a 14-year-old when you're 19. But the thing is, they're there, but they just become more buried, because you just can't get rid of them. And as I looked from the light of who I really am, and I looked at this person who'd walked into the court, I saw he was false all the way from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. He was just a made-up story. And the very interesting thing was he started to crumble. It was like I was watching a movie in a way. It was like he started to crumble. His significance started to fall apart, cracking right before my eyes. Now, there's a great story that people like to pass around about reality, about Advaita Vedanta, about enlightenment, about non-duality. These are sayings that you'll hear going around the world more and more as time goes by. And it's a story of a little lion cub who's lost his mother. And he's lonely and he's little. But he sees some sheep and he goes over, and the sheep think, well, he's only small. This is not a true story, it's just an example. He goes over to the sheep and they think, well, he's only small, that's okay. And he mingles in. And so he doesn't want to go anywhere else. He just wants company. So he acts like the sheep and he's living his life. So about a year and a half, a couple of years later, he's still there. He's still quite a young lion. He looks a bit different, but everybody just gets on with it. And one day, a lion, a big lion, comes along and thinks, I'll kill a sheep and eat it, you know. But as he's running to scatter the sheep, he sees the young cub lion. Hey, what are you doing here? You know, so he grabs him, drags him away, and puts him down. And the young lion says, "Please, Mr. Lion, don't eat me because I'm just a sheep." You know? And the lion's like, "What? You're not a sheep." The little lion's looking, saying, "What do you mean?" And he picks up the little lion again, and they go by the watering hole, look in the reflection, and the little lion, his life is never going to be the same again. Everything now is going to change. He's never going to be able to go back to his life as it was before. And that's because he looks at the lion and looks at his own reflection, and he realizes that he's a lion. Not only does he realize what he realizes what he is not. Exactly the same as me in the courtroom that day. He realizes he's not a sheep. And so he has to change. He has to awaken to his true identity. Now, at that time in my life in the court, that's exactly what happened to me. The more I looked, as I went into the sentence, I was sentenced to some time in prison. And as I was doing therapy, I didn't really want to be in the life I was in. I didn't enjoy it at all. I wanted to change. But the light that was coming through on the court that day, it kept coming through. And I started to realize more and more that who I really wasn't anything like I'd been betraying to the world. Just like the little lion. He'd been betraying himself as a sheep, but he wasn't. But once you see who you really are, it changes everything forever. And that is one of the most fundamental issues of life on this earth amongst humankind at this time. People find themselves stuck in personalities that they do not want. They're dragging around stories and images and a very manufactured lifestyle that's really not doing them any good anymore. And there's something underneath. There's something underneath light. There's a light of life underneath, which is who you really are. But the thing is, the part of us that makes the false image, you know, I remember the part of me that had created the false man, okay, that didn't give up without a fight. That didn't like the light coming along. That didn't like the light coming along because it was going to die. This was the end of your story. This is the end of the image, you know. And so there's a little struggle there with people. But it's something that's worth going through because we get to be who we really are. And we can dispense with who we're not. And who we're not, you may have a value for it today, but once you see who you really are, you won't have any value for it whatsoever. You'll drop it straight away. But you can't see who you're not until you start to see who you are.